Business news from the Capital Region. This is Washington Business Report with ABC7 national correspondent Rebecca Cooper.
Thanks for joining us for a fresh look at business and finance in the Washington region. Coming up on today's show, what Tuesday's midterms mean for the business community, what we should read into the latest layoffs at Living Social, and whether the latest job numbers tell the whole story. Plus, in our small business spotlight, lessons in how following your passion and ignoring a business plan can make you a 35-year success with a cult following. Do you know this hidden gem in D.C.? But first, it's time for our Newsmaker One-on-One. Today, we talk to the man who attended GW on a basketball scholarship and went on to become one of the biggest names in Washington business. Now he's trying to pull off something else few people thought could be done. He's joining us today to talk about it. Russ Ramsey, co-founder of Friedman Billings Ramsey and CEO of Ramsey Asset Management. He's the man who built a local startup into a multi-billion-dollar investment banking and money management firms. He's respected worldwide, and now he's been tapped to bring the 2024 Olympics to Washington. Russ Ramsey, welcome to Washington Business Report. Not to say your job's impossible to start off with, but I was one of those who didn't think Washington had a chance. Now we're one of the 4 finalists in the nation. You've got the Olympic Committee coming to Washington to take a look at what we have to offer. What do we have to offer that makes you think we could win this?
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for having me here today. I have to say that there's nothing that I've had in my life that's been as inspiring as the opportunity to bring the world's largest sporting event to the nation's capital.
A man who's got 4 kids and one of the biggest resumes in Washington, that's saying a lot. What inspires you about it?
Well, there's millions of things that separate us, but there's this one common language that brings people together and unites us, and that's sport. And if you look over the history of the Olympic Games, it's been this event that has allowed the world to sort of, whether it's divided, whether things are good, whether they're bad, it's allowed for people to come together in those 17 days of the event. It's just the world kind of stops and people are able to sort of think beyond themselves.
It's a magical moment, but we also know the metrics, and any business person is going to look at that. Make the case for why Washington would want the Olympics when so many other cities have lost money. You know, Jim Dinegar from the Washington Board of Trade is one of the biggest backers of this. He insists this could be a winner for Washington. I'm not yet convinced. Make the case.
Well, I think if we look at the most recent Olympics in London 2012, it was a transformative event for London. They made money. They put 70,000 people to work who had been previously unemployed. They transformed the entire East End, so they created resources that they never would have before. And so when you look at Washington, it's the nation's capital. We have amazing transportation and infrastructure. We have tremendous venues. We have a backstop, which is really spectacular when it comes to, think of the National Mall as a backdrop and all the beautiful monuments and the rivers and really kind of uniting the Anacostia and the Potomac River. So, we really bring, as the nation's capital of the United States of America, really an amazing place. And it will have been 28 years if we're successful since the Games were in America. So it would have been a whole generation of young people who would grow up without the Games. So it's a really important time.
One of the costs is building a new infrastructure. You all make the case to the Olympic Committee and to D.C. residents that we're one of the few cities in the country that you say has some of the infrastructure already in place. How so?
Well, we have this amazing confluence of events where we've had not only great sports venues in the past 15 years that have been built, the Verizon Center, Nationals Park, Comcast Center out in Maryland, a whole bunch of venues. So we have more venues than we need to host the games. That's the one. 2, we have tremendous parkland and the National Park Service and this amazing thing called the National Mall and the Smithsonian, where we could actually have the games smattered around the city in a way that we take advantage of our transportation infrastructure, we take advantage of all of the tremendous growth that's already happening, all these new neighborhoods. And so, we really have, much like London did, we have the ability to kind of really bring the community together in a way that only the Olympics could do.
I have to admit it, I'm getting Olympic fever. I went from being a naysayer to a skeptic to starting to feel the momentum. So good luck as this happens, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk to you about your business career because it's been such a phenomenal one, and clearly you like to win in anything that you do. So let's take a look at Friedman Billings Ramsey, FBR. 3 guys working together in a brokerage firm in the 1980s. You got your start as a salesman for Pitney Bowes. Friedman got his start as a history teacher. Billings went to University of Maryland, not a Harvard Biz School kind of guy. You all grew FBR into one of the 10 largest investment banks in the country. What were your rules for success that allowed you to swim in those kinds of waters? Because we all know those waters can be shark infested.
Well, Rebecca, hindsight's always 20/20, and I think I'd be a little bit disingenuous if I said that we had a playbook and knew all the rules and thought that we could actually, target out the future. But I will say, as I look back, that there's a couple keys to any successful endeavor. One is you have to have great partners, and you've already shared that initially. That each of us on our own, I think, would have had no chance of doing what we accomplished. But the three of us, which became 13 of us, which became 33 of us, which became 53 of us, and on and on. You have to have great partners. You have to have that great human capital. And in the case of the business world, I mean, at the end of the day, you're really marrying human capital with financial capital to create intellectual capital.
Well, you hear that a lot. That's kind of the mantra. You have to have great partners. But what does that mean? What did you and your partners bring to it? Was it intellect? Were you better researchers? Were you smarter mathematicians? What gave you insight into doing things like real estate investment trusts? You all were some of the first to create those, see the potential in them. What gave you that kind of insight and foresight?
Well, sure. I think you have to have a passion, and you have to really be committed to your art, whatever that is. One. Two, you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to fail, and you have to be willing to pick yourself back up and go again. You have to sell. You have to really be passionate about what it is you believe in, and understand that mathematically you're going to have to take a lot of no's, but you also have to believe at the end of the day, maybe they don't know what you do. And then you have to take advantage of your successes. When you do get momentum, when you actually get a little breakthrough, and you can actually, like you mentioned, read, when you have a chance to, at the beginning of a wave, and competition is going to come in and you're not going to be the first to have it, you have to really work hard and be tenacious about just seizing the moment and doing everything you can, outworking the competition, out hustling, and doing everything possible to make it happen.
Many people thought you all wouldn't make it through the recession. You went on to do other things beyond Friedman Billings Ramley. Now you've got a large asset management, investment management company. What helped FBR survive the recession, and what made you stay in the game and keep growing? Sure.
I mean, recessions and business cycles are an inevitability. I mean, if you have studied the history at all, you know that we go through a period of cycles. And so, number one, you always have to have staying power. You have to make sure that you structure yourself.
Lehman Brothers thought they did.
They thought they did, and we found that difference. So, but Warren Buffett and others figured out what staying power is all about. And two, you have to put yourself in a position to be opportunistic. The great breakthroughs in life, the great opportunities have not happened during good times. They've happened in tears of distress when it looked like the world was coming to an end. That's when Silicon Valley reemerges. That's when Wall Street and the investment community has to stand up and take charge. That's when businesses really make a difference, is during the tough times. Anybody can succeed when things are going well. It's when times are tough that you have to really be thoughtful, and that's when you have to come together.
So it starts off as three guys at a brokerage firm that nobody knew what to expect, but now you're clearly a business success. Everyone comes to you. Everybody wants something from you. You've still got a business that you're running and managing. Ted Leonsis picks up the phone and calls you and says, your country needs you to lead this effort to get the Olympics. From this example, how do you decide what to say yes to and what to say no to? Because I'm sure you get lots of tempting offers. How does anyone make that decision of this is worth taking on?
Sure. Well, I try to be thoughtful about any opportunities like this that come about, and with this one, it was no less, because it's a big undertaking. I mean, it's obviously
a full-time job.
Very big undertaking. It's a full-time job, and it was something which I'm not afraid to fail. I've failed many times in my life, but I want to sort of feel like we have a theory of the case, just like any athlete that goes on the field. I want to feel like we have a chance to win. And the more I did the research, the more I talked to Billy Payne and Peter Ueberroth and Mitt Romney and Sir Keith Mills, and Ted and I did our work, we found that there was a lot of enthusiasm about the games coming to America. And then when I looked at the nation's capital, and the fact that we're probably one of the few capitals ever not to host the games, it just felt like it was something we had to do.
You're in it to win it.
We're in it to win it.
Russ Ramsey, an honor to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us on Washington Business Report.
That's my pleasure.
And when we return, our Small Business Spotlight, those who know about this 34-year-old D.C. establishment are amazed by its uniqueness, and yet some of the neighbors didn't even know it existed. We'll take you behind a secret door when we come back. Welcome back. Ask any small business owner just what role passion plays in fueling a company's success. Well, it just might be the only thing that every entrepreneur has in common. Today in our Small Business Spotlight, how living your passion and never faltering on your philosophy not only can propel your business, but can even give you a cult following.
You see that wow effect. Oh my God. If I tell you how many OMGs I hear on a daily basis, trust me, we'll be here forever.
30,000 square feet spread out over 5 attached townhouses in the heart of DuPont Circle. It's a hotel and event location like you've never seen before.
You're opening up things about yourself that maybe haven't been open for a while, and it gets you out of your normal, typical routine.
Rock and roll memorabilia, one-of-a-kind items, a split-level log cabin room.
So the executive director for Miss Universe stayed here, and she sees everything in the house, and she said, I have to send you something. So we get this brown box in the mail, and it has the crown from Miss USA in 1988 in it.
Guests wander the house intrigued by the concept of 66 secret doors. The whole house is about the unexpected and how you react to it.
Here we go into the whole... Oh, how cool is that?
We don't say, how do we make money here? It's never been part of our vocabulary. You know, things will take care of themselves. And that's what happens. It's all word of mouth. People come in here, they are intrigued. All the big name corporations have retreats here. They walk out of here changed. It's got to work. And it's been working for 35 years. So if you try to figure out how that's happening, I have no idea.
Almost everything in the mansion on O Street has been donated, and it's all for sale.
You know, the pricing, it's not expensive. I mean, a Bob Dylan guitar that he signed, it's the only one when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You want to pay a couple months mortgage, we'll let it go. But other than that, things are very reasonably priced.
Rosa Parks has lived here. The artist formerly known as Cat Stevens stays here.
Jackson Browne just spent a week here. His band, his crew, his management, they took the whole house for a week.
It's a refuge, a place to grow. The philosophy here is find your passion and express yourself. Not much of a business plan, yet the mansion has treasures that make it recession-proof. Hot real estate, unique product, clear concept, and shining reputation.
Never change our focus, even if we're going through rough times. At any given time, we have people staying here through our Artist in Residence program. We open our doors always. If we ever change our philosophy, then it's time to close. We have over 75 guitars in the house. So this particular one is signed by Ted Jones, who performed with Elvis in 1954.
People actually have gotten emotional when they're walking because they can see something that they can relate to. Oh my God, I remember this reminds me of my late wife. It reminds me of when my son was born. It reminds me of when I got married.
This is the first color Beatle card set, uncut, right off the press. Everything is word of mouth, especially before that thing came out. The internet, we're under the radar. You walk past us, you don't even know we're here. Very private when you walk in here. It's all about privacy.
Okay, that's beyond cool, and it's right here in Washington. When we return, we've heard all about the political fallout of Tuesday's midterms, but what does it mean for business? Our analysis is next. Stay tuned for Washington Business Report. Time for the roundtable, and what a week it was. We saw more layoffs at the company that once reigned supreme as Washington's hottest startup, and new job numbers left analysts divided on what they mean. But topping the headlines this week, those stunning results in Tuesday's midterms. Here to break down what it means for business, Robert McCartney, columnist for the Washington Post, and Jennifer Neese-Connor, assistant managing editor at Washington Business Journal. Welcome back to both of you. Robert McCartney, we've got not a lot of time. We've got TV time to break it all down. We've heard the analysts talk and talk and talk all week. Let's talk about the big upset in the Maryland governor's race. What happened?
The big one.
Was it Hogan's message on taxes that won the day, or what happened?
Well, I think that was a big part of it. I think that he pounded that, and he was very clear about that. But I think also the taxes were sort of a surrogate, if you will, for general concern about the economy. I mean, he kept saying reduce taxes, yes, but also he was saying the economy is what matters, slow economic growth, slow job growth, and I think that that's what really resonated with voters. I also think that Anthony Brown and the Democrats ran a singularly inept campaign, and they were beating up on Hogan over abortion and gun control, and that's just not what voters were concerned about this time.
Voters didn't know Anthony Brown. He would have been the first African-American elected governor of Maryland, and yet African-American voters said afterwards they didn't have a reason to vote for him. They didn't know who he was. On paper, a fascinating, respectable guy. In person, a very nice guy, but he never defined himself. He totally focused on Larry Hogan, and he lost on that message.
Yeah, he was very negative, and he was very cautious. He didn't make himself available much to the voters or to the media, and I really think this was a classic example of message overcoming money. You know, the Brown
and party machinery and everything else.
Brown had the party machinery, and he had much more money. He outspent Hogan by a huge margin and still lost by a lot.
So many ways we could break down that race, but now I want to pivot to what it all means, because Jennifer Nice Connor, we saw Ed Gillespie concede on Friday in his race against Mark Warner. That's not going to change the balance of power. We already know the answer. It's Republicans. Voters went into the voting booth telling pollsters jobs and the economy were their #1 issue. But on Friday, we saw new jobs numbers that the president came out and said, see what a great job I've been doing? Break down the jobs numbers. Do they show what a great job the president's been doing?
You know, this is the 9th straight month. Friday showed us the 9th straight month in a row that we've had job growth over 200,000 jobs each month. That's actually a pretty good number to look at. Unemployment also dropped 0.1%. It's down to 5.8%. So it is actually making some progress, but numbers are one thing, people being out of work is another. So it takes time to translate from Wall Street numbers to actual how people feel about the economy.
Is that part of the reason, Bob McCartney, when you've got a president who is a Democratic president and the rich are getting richer and wages are stagnating for the middle class and the lower income, even with good job numbers, if they're not feeling it in their pocketbook, we talk about this so much that it's become cliche, but do you think the White House just doesn't get where the problems are?
No, I think they get it. I think it's very hard to do anything about it.
There's always that problem in this whole thing. The actual fixing.
So mad
but when they still claim victory and they still say it's not us, it's them, is that messaging, or is that what they really believe?
Well, I think that the White House is very frustrated by what it sees as its complete inability to get stuff done because of what they see as obstructionism on the part of the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, which is now going to be compounded by the Republican-controlled Senate. But I think that you can. They boast about creating all the jobs, but I think the wage stagnation, the fact that wages and incomes haven't gone up that much, I think that's what's really hurting their message and their reputation with a lot of the public.
I'm old school. I worked in the Senate in the days of Bob Dole and Bob Michael and Lloyd Benson and my boss David Warren, where Democrats and Republicans did work together, and the president would call and talk to and meet behind the scenes with leaders from both parties. And so I'm going to call the big winner in this race Kentucky Bourbon, because I think that's exactly what Obama and Mitch McConnell need to do, and I think they need to keep drinking until that bottle is empty, because I think you can't just talk the talk. I think you got to get in there and roll up your sleeves, and I think President Obama has failed to do that. I think if he wants deals with Congress, he's got to not have someone to disdain for Congress.
He doesn't look enthusiastic about cutting deals or dealing with
even
them.
His own party.
Yeah, I think that's not his style, and I think that that's
and how's that working for him so far?
It hasn't worked very well.
I think he's got to roll up the sleeves.
I would have paid money to be a fly on the wall at that luncheon the other day, because how do they all kind of come in and be like, hi guys, let's sit down.
How was your week?
Good to see you. Yeah, how does that actually start out?
Yeah, they don't know each other, they don't like each other, and they first need to get past #1. They need to know each other, but it may be too late. Jennifer Nice Connor, we talked about jobs nationwide with you. Some troubling layoffs here in the district, and it's not the first round. After several rounds of layoffs at Living Social, we saw more. What is happening to the darling of the Washington startup world? They ruled right there with Groupon as the daily deal site in the country, and now they're just trying to survive. We saw these layoffs, 20% of their current workforce. Are they just gasping for their final breaths of life, or do they still have some life left in them?
There are two ways to look at this. You can look at it that way. They would choose to have you also believe or want to point out that they have a brand new CEO who replaced the original CEO, Tim O'Shaughnessy, back in August. He is a former eBay executive with experience in advertising, coming at this from a very different way. And he's looking at this really as a restructuring. They really had to trim a lot of the budgetary fat to be able to realign the company in the direction they want to go.
But Tim O'Shaughnessy and those founders were visionary and right when they created the company. They knew they could get on the Daily Deal movement, and they did.
So did a lot of other people.
That's true. And it's kind of fizzled out, and I used to buy all of them, and I don't as much anymore. But do you think they know where they want to go? I'm told they want to be much more focused on continuing deals, the ones that don't expire in 24 hours.
Right.
But that cuts out all the impulse buyers like me. Do you see hope?
They want to, what they told, one of my colleagues actually sat down with their new CEO and really kind of talked it through. And one of the things they want to do is get away from the email, let the email thing kind of go by its way, focus on mobile, focus on apps, focus on data. Big data right now is very valuable, and it's a big industry. And they want to realign what they're doing to really kind of drive the focus and shift in that direction. And that was a big part of what these layoffs were from.
Gotta go. McCartney, you buy any Daily Deals ever?
My wife has bought some Groupons that I've benefited from, but that's about it.
All the people living social just went, no!
Are you a Daily Deal shopper?
Oh, heck yeah.
I'm losing interest, but I could keep one back. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us. We want to know what you thought of this week's show. So as always, reach out to us on Facebook. We're Washington Business Report. Follow us on Twitter at WashBiz. I'm at ABC7 Rebecca. And you can always watch past episodes of the show at WJLA.com and individual segments. Send them out to all your friends. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you next Sunday here on Washington Business Report. I'm Rebecca Cooper.